Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Microstrat chat, Leadership Through COVID-19. Just a couple housekeeping tips before I introduce our facilitators. We will be recording this session. We're encouraging all attendees to ask any questions they may have, as this is an open forum for discussion. When you're not speaking, we're going to ask that you keep yourselves on mute. That'll just reduce any background noise for anyone else. Any questions you have that you may not be comfortable asking out loud, feel free to type them in the Q&A section, and I will make sure it gets passed along to the facilitator. Again, we just want to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. It's now my pleasure to introduce your facilitators for today. They are both vice presidents here at Microstrategies, Beverly Geiger and Mike Mispelli. Beverly, let me go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you, Kelly, and good morning, everyone. And again, welcome to this webinar. My name is Beverly Geiger. I'm one of the leadership team here at Microstrategies, and I really have to say I appreciate everybody taking their time out of this very challenging time to talk about this topic of COVID-19. With me will be Mike Mispelli, and we will be asking the questions here, as well as I did want to open up the floor to anybody at any point in time, because we've got a lot of folks from many different industries on the phone, and I'm just asking you that you speak up, ask any questions, and share anything that you'd liked about your thoughts about what's going on today, and any technology questions you might have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Mispelli.
Thanks, Beverly. Good morning, everybody. Mike Mispelli. I'm part of the leadership team here at Microstrategies. Thank you for joining. I'm located just outside of Boston. I'm like probably the rest of you. I'm hunkered down at home with my wife and 3 kids. So appreciate you taking the time. We have 2 excellent speakers today. I want to introduce the first one. It's Andy Lodato. He's the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for The Vitamin Shoppe. Andy, if you could just take a minute and introduce yourself, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and hello, everyone. My name is Andy Lodato. I am the CEO of The Vitamin Shoppe. I am actually in Manhattan. I live in Manhattan and work in New Jersey, so we're also hunkered down here, as you can imagine. At The Vitamin Shoppe, I oversee the supply chain, inventory management, science and regulatory, strategic sourcing, technology, and a few other things. So I'm involved in all aspects of our business.
And so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to ask Bob to introduce himself. Bob is a former CIO and a technology executive. And I just ask you, Bob, to speak a little bit about yourself as well.
Good morning, guys, and welcome again. I would be hunkered down in Northwest Jersey on the lake, along with the rest of us. I have over 25 plus years technology management, as Beverly mentioned, former CIO. Work with some very large organizations to smaller organizations, and I'm currently working with multiple businesses driving value, utilizing the latest technologies, and of course their existing assets.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob and Andy. I appreciate that. So we're going to jump right into it, guys. Again, like Beverly said, if you have any questions, please just go off mute and don't be afraid to chime in. But I'm going to ask my first question, and you know, Bob, obviously this is for both you and Andy. As this pandemic started to unfold, I'm curious, what were your first priorities that you had to endure, and why? If you could just give us a little insight on that, that would be appreciated.
Andy, you want to start?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So the first thing we did was establish a leadership meeting. Our leadership group, and it's a small group of 5 people, we're meeting at 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. every day, 7 days a week. And what that group did is we came up with a list of priorities or guideposts that guides every single decision. And what those are is, first and foremost, our priority is the health and wellness of our employees. So that's the lens that we make every decision. The second guidepost is the health and wellness of our customers. We're in the wellness business, and so we want to make sure that we have the products our customers are looking for. And finally, the health and wellness of our business. You know, we want to still have a viable, thriving business when we get through all this. So we're making every decision with that lens, and so it really helps as we move forward and as things come up day to day or hour by hour to align them to those priorities.
Yeah, I think Andy nailed it from an overall perspective. I think what I would add in my experience is and parrot what Andy was saying. First and foremost, establishing communications with your folks and understanding what their status is. I mean, that's key. And I think there's some basics around just having contact and establishing that relationship back quickly. And so again, establishing the leadership team is first and foremost, but then extending out to the broader organization and making sure you're having daily touch points and understanding where folks are at, where their heads are at. It's obviously a very challenging time. We've worked from home in the past. I can tell you personal experience is a big difference between working from home and working at home. You typically have a singular focus when you're working from home. When you're doing everything at home, it really becomes challenging. So you want to make sure you understand how your folks are doing.
No, appreciate that, both of you. Definitely very, very valid and strong points. One of the things I think about is that we've gone through crises before, like 9/11 and the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008. What approaches did you learn from those events, and how are you applying those today in this environment? Either one of you.
I'll go ahead and start. So I think Andy said it before. We've dealt with a lot of regional things, nothing of this scale and impacting the nation. And it's kind of a slow burn as it comes upon us. But I think you go back to the basics of establishing communication with your task force or your senior leadership team, being able to get in touch with folks, gather information, make decisions quickly, and get it communicated out. So for me, that's the first and foremost.
Yeah, I'll add that it's all about communication. You learn that no matter how much you do, when you do those hindsight reviews, that people feel like they were out of the loop or out of touch. I will say what's different now in 2020 is we have so many better tools. I mean, the ability to do this meeting, the video, the internet, and we're all counting on these tools to be there for us. But focusing on communication, who to communicate with, to me is what I've learned from the past events that we're trying to apply aggressively in these current situations.
Yeah, to follow on to what Andy was just saying, I think that the patience, with the technology that's being utilized today by all of us. I mean, I know there's been a few glitches with a few of the broader cloud providers and such, but I would say overall we're holding up pretty well when you look at the magnitude of the folks that are now, or professionals now working from home. Things are going well. So I would ask you to have a little bit of patience if you're having some challenges. And I would say as the days and weeks come on, things will definitely straighten out for all of us. And we have had some challenges also.
Thank you, guys. I also wanted to, I don't know if anybody at the audience right now would like to, have any questions or have any ideas or just kind of share relative to some of the few things that the folks have talked about so far. So I just want to open up real quick, Kelly, to see if anybody had any ideas that they wanted to share at this point, or we can go on to the next question.
We actually did have one question come in. What are the top stresses that you guys are encountering?
I think from my standpoint, this is Bob, just the work at home, as I was saying earlier, and establishing those communication lines with the entire team. Management hasn't been a challenge. We've got the calls established multiple times a day. I think we're really getting our stride there. We're really following up with folks as we go through the different phases and it really starts to settle in. I think that's probably the biggest stressor, just making sure that the folks are okay.
For us at the Vitamin Shop,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Beverly. I think the challenge for us is that we're dealing with so many different policies, regulations, orders from different states, municipalities, what's essential, what's not essential, rules around when people are not, paid sick. And so just trying to keep up with all that and understand it all has been a real stress point for us. As we try to have consistent policies across our company, it's very difficult with all these different local, state, and federal rules.
Hey, I just saw something from James about the home networks. The folks' networks are horrible. I know, and I'm going to bring up a few basic things, right? So it's challenging when you have the kids at home, right? And we're doing a webinar and maybe somebody has to fire up the television, they're streaming a show, or they have to go to school, right? So coordinating the multiple folks in the home, that's the first thing that I would, to answer your question, James, on the in-home speed, right? Because the capabilities out there, but I think we just have to make sure we don't shoot ourselves in the foot by not sharing the broadband connections properly within our own home. And I know it's difficult because you've got multiple people running around and a lot of distractions, as I was saying earlier.
I'm going to ask and give a technical answer, so I apologize if you're not technical, but I read a really good article yesterday from Microsoft about split tunneling web traffic. So even if your users are on VPN, that you can route things like the video directly to the internet. I just Google Office 365 and split tunneling, and that's really helped us with the bandwidth.
That's a great point. Thank you for that. I actually have another question for you guys. What are you doing to boost employee morale when everybody's remote and dealing with all this uncertainty? I'm sure it's difficult with everybody being remote, as I said. What are you guys doing to deal with those types of issues?
Yeah, I really appreciate this question, Mike. We have a fun committee at the Vitamin Shop, and so the fun committee got together and said, how can we still do fun things even though we're all working at home, to use Bob's term. So one thing fun we're doing that's really simple is we have a daily meeting with about 100 people, an ops meeting, and just a quick touch base. And we've gone to Wear the Funniest Hat contest. So I know you're recording this, but I just want to show everyone my cupcake hat that I like to wear on a daily basis. So see, we got a little giggle. So we're wearing funny hats. We talked about having a virtual happy hour. Just everything we can do to keep the levity. I mean, it's a serious situation, but there's no reason you can't have a laugh or chuckle. Life goes on. So it's fun. We just reach out to people and say, what would be a fun thing to do? Pets are also really fun. Bring your cat to the video has been a little entertainment for it. So just putting a little bit of the light and fun into the daily routine is what we're doing at the Vitamin Shop.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that, to Andy's point, just turning on the cameras and listening to folks and communicating regularly, as much as you can. And I know there are a lot of broadband problems, but keep the cameras on and, cast a smile, talk about what your current situations are, put your challenges out there and let others help you through them.
Thank you, guys. Well, those are some really great points. And Andy, I do love your hat. I think it was a cupcake with a cherry on top. I was trying to see that.
Yeah, it's a cupcake. I asked my fiance if she had a funny hat, and boy, did she deliver. But if we're going to do this meeting again, I definitely recommend we all wear our best, our funniest hats.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as we talk about technologies, one of the questions I did want to ask the both of you is, what technologies are you using today that you were not using yesterday to help your employees be more productive now that most employees, are working remote? And are there, and then also kind of a second part to that question is, are there technologies that have helped you more than others to be productive?
Yeah, I'll start. So some of the things, it's embarrassing, maybe you weren't already there, but just we didn't have a way to electronically sign documents. So you need to sign things. So using Adobe and electronic signature tools. We have Office 365, as I mentioned, but everybody wasn't on OneDrive. So even though they were provisioned, they were still using their file share. So, aggressively and quickly putting out training so people could get their files in OneDrive and they'll be available in the cloud. Making sure everyone understands that these tools all have apps as well. So if you are struggling because your kids are all, on the network, then you can use your phone to get to your data, your files. In Teams itself, there's a live stream function that we've never used, but we figured it out so we could actually do a live meeting and broadcast to our 4,000 employees all at once. There's a whiteboard. I didn't know about the Microsoft whiteboard, and I went to download it and said it's already on your computer. So, hey, who knew? And so on and on and on about the tools. Mostly for me, it's been tools we have that we're just getting more value out of, or really having to investigate, educate, and get them up and running in record time.
Yeah, I would to add to that again, just utilizing the tools differently. I don't think we haven't implemented any new tools, but utilizing the tools differently has probably been the biggest piece. And to Andy's point, as an example, when you get into Teams, I'll promote a product, but there are a lot of functions out there that can really help you streamline and organize the information. You take the time to investigate it, and then I think getting the information and training your folks. So organize the information, the ideas out, and then ask people for what challenges they're having and how you can apply what others have learned. So.
Can I just add a follow-on to that? So is there anything specific that you're doing? Because I think that is a really important topic, because a lot of it is that the companies do have these tools that you talked about. How are you training the non-IT staff to use these tools? I think it's critical, because a lot of the IT staff, are aware of the tools, but how are you rolling it out in a manner that, you can make these employees productive, and how are you training them today?
It's a balance, because one thing we don't want to do is introduce a lot of new items or complexity. We want to keep things simple. And so we've tried to do is, we do have a intranet at the Vitamin Shop. So we've got a really good two-way dialogue with that. So we try to introduce things as, hey, try this. Here's, let the early adopter group kind of run with it, and then get feedback from them to help with the education and training. So that's what it is get it out there, test it from an IT perspective, let some early adopters run with it, get the learnings from them, and then use that to spread it more broadly.
100% agree. And again, ask folks what challenges they're having and hopefully apply what others have learned.
I think, okay. I'm just looking at the comments, guys, if there's,
Yeah, we have some feedback from attendees.
The chat's rolling through quickly. I was trying to keep up with it as well.
So the first comment we got was that they are loving the emphasis on being 1, customer focused, 2, humanity first, and 3, business driven, and 4, technology powered. That's some great feedback. And then from a medical practice, they are using Doxy.me to see patients virtually, which I think that's pretty awesome.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Andy and Bob, I'm just curious. I mean, as I go through this, I've been doing a lot of, I don't know about everybody else, but a lot of reading, a lot of research. As this thing kind of unfolds, not only here in the US, but around the world, is there anything that you've learned from other companies or any research that you've done that you didn't think of before that you can now kind of apply to what you're doing day to day going forward?
I have a couple examples. One that, and you read these things like the airplanes, doing the maintenance on the airplanes and things like that as we transition through it, right? So how now, since the use is so far down, can we take them into maintenance mode? I think some of the articles that I've read from China, how they're redirecting folks and putting them online, because it was a mad rush as all commerce really went online. And I know, I'm sure you guys have had the experience, Amazon being backed up for so many days. I think shifting folks around, and I think it's going to create new channels as we come out of this thing. So understanding that and then preparing for the other side, basically. So Andy, I'm not sure if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think, first of all, it's a global problem, so we can learn from everyone in the globe. Some people are ahead of us, some people are behind us. For example, you mentioned doing maintenance on the airplanes. I heard someone yesterday, a retailer that where their stores are closed, are actually pushing an OS upgrade out to the stores because, those things are disruptive, so they're doing it while there's no one there. But any chance we can do things like this meeting, get on calls with other peers, and just learn as we go is super important.
Yeah, exactly. Learn from each other and just keep sharing. I saw the one from Sarah Smith about the background noise of all the kids. I know what we had to do here. There's another professional with the home. There's one other professional in my home with me, and one child that has to go to school. And kind of a funny story is, we started up this webinar. He needed to go to class, right? So he had to dial in via voice because the broadband connection couldn't handle both of us on the webinar at the same time. So I think defining your space, getting your space, and setting up a routine. And I think that kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier, the at home. You really have to change your methods. You're not working from home, you're working at home. You have to define a space and set some ground rules to operate. So hopefully that helps there.
Thanks, guys. So, another thing, so I kind of think about all the folks that are on the phone and coming from all different industries. We've got pharma, legal, financial, services, professional services, and more, and obviously healthcare. How can they utilize technology to stay relevant and connected to their customers and partners and vendors during this time of crisis? I know we've talked a lot about, our employees and things and keeping them productive, but how do they stay connected, like I said, and relevant to their customers and their partners?
You guys got to spend so much time talking to people, a lot of one-on-ones. There are things that when you look through your calendar that are strategic, and I've canceled all of those. Long-range planning to me used to mean 3 years, and now it means 1 week. And so canceling anything that's not tactical and then replacing it with one-on-ones with all my direct reports. I'm doing skip levels and then key partners and vendors as well.
Yeah, 100% agree. Until we get stable, the strategy's out the door, and we're really working day to day, week to week, and a lot of one-on-one contact as well.
Excellent. Hey, so Bob and Andy, we do have a question from the outside. I'll just read it here real quick. How are you guiding other leaders outside your organization in this challenging time? And what have you learned, perhaps, that surprised you the most?
I think from my perspective, I'm just reaching out to people. I've known Andy from our past experiences, reaching out and asking how I can help, and staying in touch. And as we said earlier, we're learning from each other at all levels. What we can learn, what we can share is important, and just creating, I hate to say it, forums like we're on right now to share ideas and get people talking so we can become more efficient and effective, I guess the best way to say it.
Yeah, I say for me, I'm not known as an emotional guy, but I'm really trying to make every conversation I have with people to first ask, how are you? How's your family? And really make sure that people are okay before we dive into the work. So I'm forcing myself to have those conversations, and they're really valuable. What have I learned the most? I had no idea how intensive this working at home is. For me, it's scheduled meetings from 8 to 6 and not a lot of breaks. I heard something funny yesterday. So I think on this, they said, during your lunch break, there's no concept of lunch break. And so I think moving forward, if I'm going to be longer term working at home, I have to schedule a little differently. My Apple Watch I don't even have on. Usually it's telling me to get up every hour, and I haven't moved out of this chair, it feels like, for 14 days.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that for sure.
The intensity level at a personal level, I think, and the pressure you feel, that I think for me that was the most unusual experience. I'll go back to the work from home where you have that singular focus on a couple items versus working at home, and the method of communication on a phone call or a video conference, how you have to be patient with folks versus being in the room, and it's much more lackadaisical on the communication side. The level of intensity is immense, pretty crazy.
We had a great question just come in from Joe. He asked, do you think that once we get back to some level of normalcy, people will be more or less inclined to work from home? And should organizations make changes to work from home become more a normal part of their business?
Yeah, let me answer this first. I think that there are many things that will change forever, or at least in the long term. And so I think work from home is one of the key ones. I've had a few naysayers, legacy leaders, I call them, that were really against work from home because we already had a work from home virtual Friday program. And they've come around. And, as long as the employees are staying productive, which right now everybody's so engaged and productive, I think absolutely. For me, right now I miss going to the office, so I don't think it'll be a 5-day-a-week thing. But, I think people that don't have it all will probably introduce 1 or 2 days a week. For me, I think it'll be more of a job-by-job, person-by-person, and probably in that 1 to 3 days per week, depending on, each person's job and their home situation. So, yeah, the answer is yes.
100% agree that many things are going to change as a result. I've always been a strong proponent of work from wherever you are. It doesn't really matter. As I said earlier, I didn't quite understand the intensity of doing it every day of the week. But I think one aspect, and I think you see this in your kids, the social aspect of going to the office, we all need that, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the biggest things in this hunkering down or stay at home methodology we have with the kids here as well. The kids want to go back to school. I want to go back to the office. So I think that it's definitely going to change. I just don't think things will be as rigid. And I think to Andy's point, the not, I hate to use the word legacy, but some of the folks that were kind of set in their ways about work at home and wanted to understand what every minute of every day, how it was being spent. I think we all understand that that's not reality. It's about getting your job done, putting forth the effort, and showing results. And you don't have to be in one certain place to make that happen. But again, all that being said, I think the social aspect of it and getting back to the office, I think is quite frankly something I'm looking forward to. So.
I actually had another comment / question come in on that same topic. They stated, I've seen a lot of comments about moving from weekly meetings in the office to daily meetings when working remotely. How do you avoid becoming a micromanager or the perception that you have become one?
All right, I'll start. So if you're going to have a daily meeting, and I have a daily meeting that I love, the Funny Hat meeting, we go through operations. You can only talk about things that happen in one day, right? So you should never have a daily meeting and talk about things that are going to be a week or a project that's going to be months or a year, because then you'll repeat yourself. And so you're not micromanaging if you're just talking about the short term. But yeah, I think that for me, my daily meeting that got expanded because of this will not ever go away. It's just been a great meeting and everybody feels really informed. But micromanagers are going to micromanage, I guess, right? I don't think that's the frequency of the meeting. It's just making sure that people have that tendency are just careful not to.
I think you raise a great point, though, the interval and the content, right? So the interval of the meeting, talk about the day, talk about next steps. So you're putting it at more of a micro level, but you can't go outside the interval, I guess is the best way to say it. And I also agree. I think as a result of what we're seeing, the organization is going to collapse, right? Meaning not in a bad sense, in a good sense. And that I think what Andy meant by expanding his meeting is he's pulling more of maybe the individual contributors or other levels of management into his meetings, and he's cutting out the communication. So there's more direct communication that's more efficient. I think we're going back to some of the things we said earlier about some of the things we're going to learn and the more the efficiencies. I think that's amazing. So I do think that's going to happen. We're going to learn to communicate more effectively and succinctly and bring broader groups in to communicate with one another. So I think it's all positive things, I believe. So I'm not worried about the micromanagement. I think it'll expose it and people will change their ways, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah.
Kelly, do we have time for one more question or?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there's a question about how are we balancing the short term and the long term relative to what's going on here. I know, we hear that the, pandemic can last a couple weeks and then you hear, a couple months. So can you talk about what plans we're putting in place if the crisis lasts longer than expected? And also, what are we doing short term versus long term?
Yeah, no, I would say that, and I said it earlier, we're redefining long term. And so we're not talking at all about 2022 right now, not at all. But, making sure that the places where we have stores closed, having a detailed plan so that when it's time to reopen them, how do we make sure they're staffed, clean, there's inventory? So we're making those types of plans. As far as the long term, we're thinking about, are there different products that we need to carry and sell? So we're looking at that. But we are talking about long term. I mean, we have events, sales, seasons, things coming up in the summer and fall, and we're going through that calendar event by event and making sure it's still relevant and will be relevant with that. So we are doing some long-term planning, but even so, it's more in the 4 to 6 month to the end of the year at the most for us.
Yeah, I'd say we're out 6 months and we're reevaluating our process to make sure that they make sense. So as I think Andy said earlier, the long-term strategic planning is out the window right now. It's much more tactical, almost daily, but the horizon is 6 months and we're just trying to understand the beginning and the end. But in my personal opinion, and I'm not an expert, but I think we're looking at least 90 days before you start to see an uptick in happening. I think it's going to continue to challenge us. We're going to continue to evolve. And I think 90 days out, we'll start to see a turnaround. And then hopefully by 6 months, as we're talking, we can plan to get back to the new normal.
Great.
Thank you.
Do we have time for another question, Kel, or do you want to open it up to everybody?
I think everybody's already doing
I
it.
think I'd like to say, if anyone wants to come off mute and jump in, you are more than welcome to do so. I mean, this is as much a conversation for you guys as it is for our panelists. But Mike, while we wait for other people to interject, go ahead, ask another question. We have the time.
Yeah, I'm just curious from Bob and Andy, during this, as leaders, are there things that you've learned about yourself during this time that you'd like to share with us, or that kind of surprised you guys?
I think I said it earlier. The work at home, and when you rationalize it, and when it's impacting everyone in your family, I think the discipline it takes, because of the pressure you're feeling, the stress. I think just staying focused and the ability to do that, because as a senior leader, you are more strategic, right? I mean, I'll be the first to say that I'm not the most disciplined person in the world. The ideas that I come up with, some people think I'm nuts, and then a couple years later they sound really good, because it typically takes that long to implement things. So I think having the ability to get focused and deal with the pressure that you're feeling in the immediacy of it, for me, I think that was the most important point. Andy, I'll let you follow on that.
No, I agree. I think that I'm trying to think if there's anything I learned. Just I do maybe didn't think it mattered to me to be in the office, to be around people, but I do like to go out to our stores, out to our warehouses. So being stuck at home has been tougher than me than I would have imagined if you would have asked me.
100% agree. That the social aspect and from all angles is a tough one.
Bob, Sarah just gave some more feedback. She said she absolutely agrees at how hard it is to work at home and stay focused. She said it's important to set time aside for self-meditation and time to de-stress. Actually,
that's something that I just started doing. That's a great point. Really starting to meditate and just relax because of the intensity of the day and the details that you're trying to pay attention to. And again, to keep everyone else in the family focused as well and making sure you're supporting them. And I think Sarah, I think you said you had an 8-year-old. I have a 9-year-old, so it's challenging.
We actually had a question just come in for you, Bev and Mike. What resonates with you most from Andy and Bob?
I'll take that one first, Bev. I think,
Yep.
I just think the way that you guys have kind of jumped in and, in this remote environment and how you've been working with your teams. I mean, Andy, I think one of the things that resonates with me a lot that we started doing here that we hadn't done in the past is, kind of having daily stand-ups with your teams. That's so important to do, especially like you said earlier, Bob, with video on and just being able to communicate with your team, not rehashing things from earlier in the week or later in the week, just kind of planning out the day and making sure everybody's on the same page. That kind of resonated with me a lot. And I think it's important that we do communicate with our teams. And the other thing you said, Andy, was spot on is, sometimes I think we all get busy and we kind of try to keep focused on the business at hand, but taking that first couple of minutes and taking a personal viewpoint of, how they doing, how's the family doing, how's everybody doing type of approach is very important that we communicate not only to our customers, but to our employees the same way. So I got a lot out of that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. No, I think there's a lot of great points that you guys brought out. I was listening to actually some of the technology tips that you both had. I listened to that, and I think that's really important. I think, a lot of folks on the line, I'm sure they have collaboration technology that they own that came part of Microsoft and other things like Teams, and they're not utilizing them as well as they could be. And we're finding that just understanding what that technology is and educating your staff on how to use it has just really been helpful for a lot of folks. I think also too, taking every day, like you were saying, Andy, and taking it in small increments as well is really important as you're talking to your team and having them navigate through this, because I think it's a very stressful time, and we talked about being remote adds stress on top of trying to operate a business in this time. So taking through that day view, but then also to making sure in the long term you are kind of reevaluating what your plans are and do they still make sense, or do you really need to retool because what we knew before is not the normal that we're in now, and there's like a new normal. So I think just keeping in check with that, I think, is really important. So I just want to appreciate all the input that you guys had in your thoughts and sharing it with the folks on the call.
Thank you.
We just had another question come in. How are you handling people who are having so much trouble adapting?
You have a few of those problem children, right? So what I asked them to do is make a list of what their problems are or what they're struggling with, kind of line by line. And then we have, in our office, we run this smart bar so people could do walk-up help desk. And so we've redirected that team to be the work at home smart desk. And so we're just going user by user, and if their computer's slow, you know, people in work all have nice big monitors, and we didn't buy everyone nice big monitors for home. So we're just going through it user by user to address their very specific needs.
I would agree with that. By the way, it's a great idea to redirect the folks to take the calls digitally. But again, it's a one-on-one, and I think setting up groups or calls to talk about the problems with individuals is good. You give someone to talk to, but those outliers, reach out to them and ask them how they're doing, and maybe set up some one-on-one time with them.
So I just ask, is there anything else from, you know, I know we covered a lot of topics today. Mike and I were asking a bunch of questions. Is there anything that you guys, anything that comes to mind, or anybody out there in the audience that we haven't spoke about that they would like to touch upon? I think we covered a lot of areas, but is there anything there top of mind that maybe we might have missed that you guys would like to bring up? And that's both, you know, Bob and Andy, as well as the audience.
I think the positives, and we touched on a little bit, the new normal. I think the process that we're developing is a real positive. So, and there's, you know, what doesn't take you down makes you stronger, I guess, is the kind of thing. I think that's from a business perspective and an operational perspective. I think the efficiency we're going to gain, and we're going to be more stable in the future. We're going to have more rigidity or capability to sustain more of these type of events. I mean, it could be worse. It could definitely be worse, but this is obviously a significant event. And I just think what we're learning today is going to make us that much stronger in the future, and better, more efficient, and better for everyone all around.
I agree with that. I agree with Bob a lot. What I would add is there are some things that aren't working very well. For example, we sell our products on Amazon, and the feed runs every 3 hours, and it's not fast enough right now. So we're running out of product, and the inventory is getting out of whack. That was fine for us for 40 years. And so, you know, our business, but now it's different. And so really making a list of everything that's under strain, that's cracking or breaking, so that when things do get back to normal, that we can go back and reinforce and upgrade any of those capabilities, processes, or systems.
We have about 5 more minutes. Does anyone from the audience want to jump in with feedback, questions, comments, concerns? All right, I guess not. So I think we will go ahead and wrap up. As long as panelists, do you guys have any other last comments you want to share?
I think it came out loud and clear, but everyone needs to take care of themselves first and their families, and be in a really good place so that they then have plenty to give back for their jobs.
100% agree with Andy, and I look for the positives coming out of this event going forward. Take care, everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Absolutely. Mike, Bev, anything from you guys?
No, just the same thing. I echo what they're saying. You know, just focus on yourself and the health of your family and yourselves, and as well as not only the physical health, but the mental health of the employees as well.
All right, well, thank you everyone that took time out of your days to join us. We really appreciate it. I think we had a great session. I know for me, it was just nice to hear everyone kind of talk about all the struggles we're each dealing with working remotely and with the new normal. So stay healthy, stay safe, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks, Kelly.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you, Kelly.
Bye-bye. Take care, everybody.